Have you ever noticed something strange about INFJs? When conflict appears, they often do not attack. They do not argue loudly. They do not fight to win. Instead, they step back. At first, this can look like weakness. Some people think INFJs are avoiding confrontation. Some assume they are being passive. Others believe they simply cannot handle conflict. But that is not the truth. INFJs are actually one of the most complex personality types in the entire Myers-Briggs system. And when they step back, it is rarely because they are afraid. In fact, stepping back is often a sign of something deeper. Something strategic. Something emotional. Something wise. INFJs see conflict differently than most people. They think long-term. They read emotional energy. They sense motives beneath words. And sometimes, fighting simply does not make sense to them. In this video, we will explore 12 powerful reasons why INFJs often step back instead of fighting. And if you are an INFJ yourself, you may recognize parts of your own quiet decisions in these reasons. 1. INFJs see the bigger picture. One of the most important traits of the INFJ personality type is their ability to see patterns. INFJs are known for their deep intuition. In personality psychology, this is called introverted intuition. It allows them to see beyond the moment. While others focus on the argument happening right now, INFJs often see where that argument will lead tomorrow, or next week, or even years later. Because of this, they constantly ask themselves a silent question. Is this fight actually worth it? Many times, the answer is no. INFJs quickly recognize when a disagreement will not change anything. They can sense when the other person is not ready to listen. They can feel when emotions are already too heated. And when that happens, stepping back becomes the smarter move. To an outside observer, this might look like giving up. But in reality, it is strategic emotional intelligence. INFJs know that some battles drain energy without creating real understanding. They prefer meaningful resolution over temporary victory. And if stepping away protects the long-term relationship, they often choose that path. 2. INFJs feel emotional energy very deeply. Another reason INFJs avoid direct conflict is their sensitivity to emotional energy. INFJs are often described as highly empathetic people. They feel the emotions in a room almost immediately. Anger, tension, frustration. These feelings do not just stay outside of them. They absorb them. When an argument starts, the emotional intensity can become overwhelming. Not because INFJs are weak, but because their empathy is extremely strong. During heated conflict, they often feel two emotional experiences at once. Their own emotions, and the other person's emotions. This can create emotional overload. So instead of escalating the conflict, INFJs instinctively step back. They need space to breathe, space to process, space to return to emotional balance. Stepping away helps them protect their mental clarity. And once calm returns, they are often able to think more clearly about how to handle the situation. 3. INFJs prefer harmony over winning. For many personality types, arguments are about winning. They want to prove a point. They want to show they are right. But INFJs often approach conflict from a completely different perspective. Winning is not the main goal. Harmony is. INFJs deeply value emotional peace in their relationships. They want conversations that lead to understanding, not domination, not humiliation, not emotional damage. When a conflict begins turning into a power struggle, INFJs often lose interest in continuing. They know that even if they win the argument, the relationship itself might lose. And for an INFJ, relationships matter deeply. So instead of continuing a destructive debate, they step back. Not because they cannot argue, but because they do not want to destroy emotional connection. 4. INFJs are quiet strategists. Many people misunderstand quiet personalities. They assume silence means passivity. But with INFJs, silence often means observation. When conflict begins, INFJs immediately start analyzing the situation. They observe tone. They observe body language. They observe the emotional reactions of everyone involved. And they gather information. Sometimes stepping back is simply part of that process. Instead of reacting impulsively, they pause. They study the situation from multiple angles. They consider motives. They examine possible consequences. This makes INFJs excellent long-term thinkers. They often choose the moment to respond very carefully. In many cases, the real conversation happens later, when emotions are calmer, when people are ready to listen, and when thoughtful dialogue becomes possible. 5. INFJs know words can cause permanent damage. INFJs are extremely aware of the power of words. They know that one sentence spoken in anger can leave scars that last for years. In heated arguments, people often say things they regret, things they cannot take back. INFJs understand this risk very well, because they think deeply about emotional consequences. So when a conflict becomes emotionally dangerous, they may choose silence. Silence protects both people. It prevents impulsive reactions. It prevents emotional wounds. It prevents the situation from spiraling out of control. Many INFJs would rather pause the conversation than risk saying something that could permanently hurt someone they care about. 6. INFJs process conflict internally first. Another unique trait of INFJs is how they process emotions. Many people process conflict externally. They talk it out immediately. They debate. They argue. They raise their voices. But INFJs process internally. When something upsetting happens, their mind begins sorting through layers of meaning. They ask themselves questions like, why did this happen? What is the deeper issue? What might the other person be feeling? What would lead to real resolution? This internal processing takes time. So stepping back allows them to fully understand their own emotions first. Only after that reflection can they communicate clearly. Without this pause, their thoughts might still be tangled. And INFJs dislike expressing themselves before their ideas feel fully understood. 7. INFJs sense when someone is not ready to listen. One of the most powerful abilities of INFJs is emotional perception. They often sense when someone is not truly open to understanding. During heated arguments, many people stop listening. They only prepare their next response. INFJs quickly recognize this pattern. They notice when the conversation becomes defensive, when ego replaces curiosity, when understanding becomes impossible. In those moments, continuing the argument feels pointless. So they step back. Not because their point is weak, but because communication requires two willing participants. INFJs would rather wait until a real conversation becomes possible. 8. INFJs protect their emotional energy. Emotional energy is extremely important for INFJs. Because they feel things deeply, conflict can drain them very quickly. A long argument can leave them exhausted for hours, sometimes days. This is why many INFJs become very selective about the battles they fight. They ask themselves, is this situation meaningful enough to justify the emotional cost? If the answer is no, stepping back becomes an act of self-respect. Protecting emotional energy allows INFJs to stay balanced. It also helps them show up fully in the relationships and causes that truly matter to them. Not every disagreement deserves their full emotional investment. 9. INFJs believe timing matters. INFJs understand something many people forget during arguments. Timing changes everything. The same conversation can end in disaster today, but lead to understanding tomorrow. Why? Because emotions evolve. Perspective grows. Defensiveness fades. INFJs often wait for the right moment. A calm environment. A private setting. A relaxed conversation. When the emotional storm passes, meaningful dialogue becomes possible. This patience allows INFJs to approach difficult topics more effectively. And when they finally speak, their words are often thoughtful, balanced, and surprisingly insightful. 10. INFJs value emotional safety. Emotional safety is extremely important for INFJs. They do not take it lightly. For them, emotional safety is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. Without it, trust slowly disappears. And when trust disappears, connection begins to fade. INFJs want relationships where honesty feels safe. They want conversations where people can speak openly, without fear, without shame, without the feeling of being attacked. They value environments where people can share their real thoughts, even the uncomfortable ones, where vulnerability is respected, not mocked, not dismissed, not used as a weapon later. INFJs believe vulnerability is a sign of courage. It means someone is willing to show their true self, their doubts, their fears, their hopes. And INFJs treat that openness with deep care, because they understand how fragile that moment can be, where disagreements do not turn into personal attacks. For INFJs, disagreement itself is not the problem. Different opinions are normal. Different perspectives are healthy. They actually appreciate thoughtful debate. But what they cannot tolerate is cruelty. When disagreements shift from ideas to personal attacks, something changes. The emotional atmosphere becomes unsafe. Respect disappears. Understanding disappears. And the conversation stops being productive. If a conflict starts becoming emotionally unsafe, INFJs instinctively withdraw. This response often happens quietly, without drama, without shouting, without confrontation. It may seem sudden to the other person, but internally, the INFJ has already sensed a shift in emotional energy. They can feel when the conversation is no longer constructive. Not permanently, but temporarily. Their withdrawal is rarely meant to punish anyone. It is not about manipulation. It is about protection. They need space. Space to breathe. Space to calm their thoughts. Space to protect their emotional balance. They step back to create distance from harmful dynamics. Sometimes that distance lasts minutes. Sometimes hours. Sometimes longer. The goal is simple: to prevent the situation from becoming more damaging. INFJs understand that intense arguments can spiral quickly. Words spoken in anger often travel too far. So they pause the interaction before things cross that line. This helps them protect their inner world. The inner world of an INFJ is deep and sensitive. It is filled with thoughts, emotions, ideals, and reflections. They carry a strong awareness of the emotional tone around them. And negative emotional environments affect them strongly. When people become harsh or aggressive, INFJs feel that energy deeply. Stepping away allows them to reset their emotional state. It gives them a chance to restore their inner calm. Because for INFJs, emotional wounds cut very deeply. Words that others forget quickly can stay in an INFJ's mind for years. They remember tone. They remember intention. They remember the emotional meaning behind what was said. This does not mean they hold grudges easily, but emotional wounds take time for them to process. They reflect on the meaning of what happened. They replay conversations in their mind, trying to understand what went wrong. Maintaining emotional safety allows them to remain open, compassionate, and authentic. When INFJs feel safe, their best qualities appear naturally. Their empathy grows stronger. Their kindness flows easily. Their wisdom becomes clear. They listen deeply. They support others sincerely. But when emotional safety disappears, those qualities begin to close down. Not out of selfishness, but out of self-protection. By protecting emotional safety, INFJs preserve the part of themselves that loves deeply and cares deeply. And that is something they value more than winning any argument. 11. INFJs know some people cannot be changed. One of the hardest lessons INFJs eventually learn is this: not everyone wants to grow. This realization often takes years. Because INFJs naturally believe in human potential. They believe people can learn. They believe people can evolve. They believe people can become better versions of themselves. And because of this belief, INFJs often invest a lot of emotional energy into helping others grow. Not everyone wants to understand. Some people prefer comfort over reflection. They prefer familiar patterns, even if those patterns cause harm. Understanding requires humility. It requires a willingness to question your own behavior. And not everyone is ready for that level of honesty. Not everyone is willing to reflect on their behavior. Self-reflection can be uncomfortable. It forces people to confront mistakes, to admit flaws, to accept responsibility. For many individuals, this feels threatening. So instead of reflecting, they defend themselves. They deny problems. They blame others. And they resist any suggestion that change might be needed. INFJs often try very hard to help people improve. They offer thoughtful advice. They share gentle insights. They try to guide conversations toward deeper understanding. Sometimes they even sacrifice their own comfort to support someone else's growth. Because when INFJs care about someone, they care deeply. They want the relationship to evolve. They want both people to grow together. But after repeated experiences, they realize something important. Effort must come from both sides. Growth cannot be forced. Understanding cannot be demanded. And change cannot be created for someone who refuses to see the need for it. Some individuals simply resist change. Not because they are incapable, but because they choose not to. They protect their current identity. They protect their habits, even when those habits create repeated conflict. INFJs slowly recognize this pattern over time, often after giving many chances, often after having many long conversations, often after trying patience again and again. When INFJs sense this pattern, they stop fighting. The realization may feel heavy at first, because INFJs naturally want to believe in people. They want to believe improvement is possible. But wisdom grows through experience. And eventually they see when their efforts are no longer making a difference. They step back. Not dramatically. Not with loud accusations. Usually very quietly. Sometimes the other person barely notices at first. But internally, the INFJ has already made a shift. They are no longer trying to push for change. They are no longer fighting to fix something that cannot be fixed alone. Not with anger. Anger would still mean emotional investment. Anger would mean they are still trapped in the struggle. Instead, the INFJ moves toward emotional distance. A calm understanding. A quiet recognition of reality. But with quiet acceptance. Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean the behavior is suddenly okay. It simply means the INFJ understands they cannot control another person's choices. People must decide to grow on their own. And when that decision never arrives, the INFJ eventually stops trying to force it. They redirect their energy toward people who are open to growth and mutual respect. This shift is powerful. Instead of investing emotional energy in constant conflict, they invest it where it can actually grow. Toward friendships built on respect. Toward relationships built on honesty. Toward people who listen. People who reflect. People who care about becoming better. For INFJs, this change brings peace. It allows them to protect their emotional well-being. And it reminds them of something important. Their energy is valuable. Their empathy is valuable. Their patience is valuable. And those gifts deserve to be shared with people who truly appreciate them. 12. When INFJs finally fight, it usually means something important. Here is something many people misunderstand about INFJs. They may avoid conflict often, but when they finally decide to stand their ground, it usually means something truly matters. INFJs do not fight for ego. They fight for values. They fight for fairness. They fight for people they love. And when that moment comes, their calm voice can become surprisingly powerful. Because by that point, they have thought deeply about the issue. They have examined every angle. And their words carry conviction. INFJs rarely raise their voices. But when they speak with clarity and purpose, people often listen. Stepping back is not weakness. For INFJs, it is often wisdom. They understand emotional complexity. They value harmony. They protect their energy. And they recognize that not every conflict deserves a battle. Sometimes the strongest choice is silence. Sometimes the smartest response is patience. And sometimes stepping back is simply a way of choosing peace. If you are an INFJ, you may have experienced this many times in your life. People might misunderstand your quiet decisions. They might assume you are avoiding confrontation. But in reality, you are often thinking far deeper than they realize. And that quiet depth is one of the most powerful strengths of the INFJ personality. If you resonate with these INFJ traits, you are not alone. Many highly intuitive and empathetic people experience the world this way. If you enjoyed this exploration of the INFJ personality type, consider subscribing for more insights into psychology, introverted personalities, emotional intelligence, and personal growth. And let us know in the comments. Are you an INFJ who prefers stepping back from conflict? Or have you experienced this behavior from someone close to you? Your experiences might help someone else understand themselves a little better.